I usually get asked as a libertarian, what's your stance on the Federal Reserve? My stance on the Federal Reserve is basically the same thing that a lot of other libertarians have. And in case you don't know what that stance is, I'll explain it to you. The Federal Reserve, which was established in 1913, has been wrong about every single economic thing in the past 20 so years. On top of that, having a fractional banking system which does nothing, that absolutely ruins the economy, is another reason why we should end the Federal Reserve. But just so we're clear on the matter, it isn't just a Federal Reserve, it's Keynesian theory economics. Keynesian theory economics is basically something that's been used forever since the Great Depression, and it's done absolutely nothing. And I'll explain to you why exactly. Basically, in Keynesian theory economics, their answer to everything is spend, 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 spend. It doesn't work that way. It can never work that way. Let's take right now, for example, there's a recession. The biggest thing about the Federal Reserve is they have this theory that you can inject money into somebody's pocket and have them spend to boost the economy. What they don't understand, though, is what they're doing is taking out from one side of their pocket and inflating it into another. In a recession, you do not spend, spend, spend. You save, actually. And basically, it doesn't gain any national income. It just redistributes it. That's all it does. Much like other government programs, which basically redistribute wealth and things like that. The job market, the unemployment rate, all these things should be stabilized by the Federal Reserve. However, when you have what's called quantitative easing, which does absolutely nothing except print money out of thin air, it won't do anything. Let's take a couple examples of quantitative easing. I believe it was QE3, where quantitative easing 3 basically called for $40 billion a month, and I forgot what it was for, but for the most part, $40 billion a month printed out of thin air. When you start printing money like that, what happens is inflation happens. And in case you don't know, inflation is a hidden tax. But when you have inflation, which is an increase in the monetary supply, it decreases the dollar. So $40 billion a month, and I believe QE3 had no ending point. It basically just ruined the economy even worse than it already was prior to the housing bubble, the internet bubble, things like that, which the Federal Reserve basically gave out billions and billions of dollars to banks to lend out to people who could not afford anything, and it did nothing to stabilize the economy. It just caused massive inflation. So another example would be QE4, which basically called for $85 billion a month, all in an effort to lower the unemployment rate to under 6.5%. Now, when they do this quantitative easing, what happens is they feel that it's going to encourage people to borrow, lend, and spend. But that isn't the case. It never is the case. The basis for quantitative easing is bailing out major corporations or major banks and giving them billions of dollars while the average American sees nothing. I see this as an economic flaw. We cannot stabilize any sort of economy so long as we have Keynesian theory economics, the Federal Reserve, and the federal government limiting and steering the free market. And just to clarify things, if you look at how bad inflation has gotten, if you take $1 million today, it would be minuscule by that in the dollar amount. However, if you took $1 million today and put that in gold, something that's actual sound money, you'd have about $77 million. So I'll never understand exactly why the Federal Reserve has this theory that spending, 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 and printing money out of thin air is going to fix anything, when in fact it's not. Every time you have quantitative easing, they have another round to basically try to reduce the risk of everything that already happened from the previous one. Except the outcome is more tragic every time. Each round, more damage is caused to the economy and it needs to be fixed. Artificially low interest rates for those who rely on interest income like the elderly and pension funds, printing money just hurts them more and more by making things cost more. The Federal Reserve also does not enact any other policies. The only thing that they actually do is just say that they're going to keep short-term interest rates at zero, which they've been doing for years now, and it's done nothing to stabilize the economy. As long as we stop ignoring what real money is, sound money, gold, silver, anything like that, we just have a system that can basically print out money out of thin air. And that's basically what they're doing. So when I say that I'm against a Federal Reserve, I'm against crony capitalism, and I'm against big government bailouts, of course I'm against these things because people do not see what happens as a person with what the Federal Reserve does. Nothing gets through to them. You tell them one thing, you tell them that the Federal Reserve is doing this, you explain economics on a macro level, and they don't want to do anything about it. And so long as we have the Federal Reserve, the money is going to decrease. Quantitative easing is going to continue. They've already called for quantitative easing 5, which is $150 billion a month. You have to ask yourself at a point in time, what can the federal government or the Federal Reserve do to change these things that are going on and eventually boost the economy? Like I said, the very first thing we can start doing is we can start getting rid of this Keynesian theory economic policy that we have. Keynesian theory, in theory, is already bad, let alone in practice. Also, this is me saying I do live in Corpus Christi, Texas. I would also like to send any sort of invite to people who are fellow libertarians or see any sort of views that I have and would like to interact with me. I'd like to set up some sort of political activist type group. Maybe we can meet sometime, get together and discuss political ideas. If you're up for it, I will put my Facebook link on there. You can add me and hopefully I will get a hold of you guys.